Okay, we're going to retrofit a navigation system into a 1998 740i. This vehicle is equipped with DSP radio, stock system, hi-fi, non-nav. Navigation can be retrofitted into vehicles without DSP also. You're just going to have to replace the non-DSP amp with a DSP unit. This here is a Philips amplifier. You can just tell by the shape. And for the low amp, the fins come all the way up, but it comes down diagonally this way. So all you have to do is just substitute the non-DSP amp with a DSP amp in order to retrofit full navigation with DSP. What you want to do is first pull off the main harness off the connector that's on the driver's side tail lamp. On a DSP amp, you want to remove two connectors. Slide, that's the main connector. And push down on the tab, slide it down, and that's a 16 pin. This is your existing speaker harness. I think it goes to all the speakers, and then you're going to splice two speaker wires that come off the rear doors, off the main harness, I believe. We'll get into that a little bit later to tell you which pins they are. Now, before proceeding with the retrofit and routing the navigation wiring harness, we're going to test the system out first. Okay. You got your main plug here for the power. This here is for your reverse and speed sensor. And from this end, it usually goes all the way up to the ABS module. But MKIIIs are not dependent on that. And MK4s. Okay. So you got your radio plug here. Antennas and diversity. We're going to take the main harness to the amp and plug that in. Just simply put it on there, slide it and lock it in. And the 16 pin. Okay. This we're actually going to remove from the harness. We're going to unwrap this entire harness because this is already existing on the vehicle, so we don't need that. It thins out the harness and makes everything easier to route. Okay. You've got your navigation computer connectors. I'm going to plug that in. Push on, snap on. Okay, that's where your GPS antenna connects. Now on the MKIIs, you've got a separate trimble that mounts over there. And your existing CD changer will no longer work unless you have a 99 with the iBus CD changer, which this one is not. That's my sister-in-law. She's supposed to be studying for her finals, but nothing, I'm just doing navigation, informational, what do you call it, videos. I'm teaching the world how to retrofit navigation into BMWs.
Very nice.
So, for people who need their hands held when they do this, that's what I'm doing.
Well, you know, some of us need that. Have fun.
I bet you can do this.
No.
Sure you can.
You'd have
Now
to
let's get your husband to do this. Oh.
Yes, that is when pigs fly.
When pigs fly. Okay. This is your ground plate here. Nothing will work unless this is grounded. Okay? So you've got your antenna connections that go on the C-pillar. you're going to remove the existing ones that go into the radio. Okay. There's your other antenna cable end. And in the end, it routes to the last connectors, which would be for your board monitor, blue and white, which will plug to the back. Notice how I did the DVD mod behind the screen here. This is a half-DIN size DVD player. There's no more cassette mechanism in there. If you want to know how to do that, just go to beerandboard.com and my post will be there. So, plug it in, plug it in. Okay, everything should be set. And lastly, connect the ground plate, which we'll do here. Okay, and everything's all connected. So what we're going to do last is finally plug in the harness. And then once you do that, you'll hear the navigation computer power up. Okay, so we're going to hit the time. Ta-da! Turn the key on. Usually, sometimes the amp will have to be coded for navigation retrofit. This is a Philips amp, and I actually tried it earlier, and the sound didn't turn off after 30 seconds, so I don't have to code this amp. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to plug this probe as my antenna. Hit the accept button, and let's see what kind of channels we get in this area. Okay. Okay, here's what we'll do. We'll do manual search. We should get 104.3 out here. Barely. Okay, I had to cut the last video short because I ran out of memory, but just to show you that there's sound, it's been playing for about 5 minutes. Don't get good reception out here, Santa Clarita Valley. But at least I know I don't have to code the amp. So now we're going to work on the harness and separate the speaker wirings. Okay, the unwrapping of the navigation harness. We are going to remove this 26-pin speaker harness because this is already existing in a DSP equipped BMW. So we're going to remove this because all this does is just create additional thickness. We're going to remove that so it'll thin out the harness and it just gets in the way. So on the ends, when this was pulled out of a originally equipped nav vehicle, they were cut anyway. And the Mickey Mouse way, whoever did this last time, I won't say the names, cut and spliced the wires where the B pillars were. Sloppy way to do it. Okay. The blue side, I believe, is the right, and the yellow, I believe, is the left. Don't quote me on that. I'm just trying to work out from memory here, but that's not accurate. This is supposed to go to the cigarette lighter, the rear cigarette lighter under the vents on the originally equipped navigation cars, but for the cars that weren't equipped with it, it has a separate plug already, so you have two connectors, two power sources. This can be used for something else. get your ground. Get your two grounds here. You got your positive, and you got your illumination here. That can come in handy later. Okay. So we'll start off like that. And instead of using the cloth tape, we're just going to use standard electrical tape. Works for me. Okay? As you can see, this is a very tedious task removing the cloth tape. You usually want to start from the board monitor end, separating the speaker wires. Got the yellow ones. You don't have to worry about the positions of the wires at this point. You have to worry not to disturb the positioning from the ground plate on. So carefully unwrap the cloth tape, but leaving all the wires in the same position. You just want to pull the wires, the speaker wires, up to this point and carefully part them from the existing harness. Once you get the speaker wires from this point on, you want to secure that position with some electrical tape so it doesn't move. Same when you get to this point. So towards the end of the rear of the car. So I unwrapped all the cloth tape just to remove this 26-pin speaker harness. And I'll show you once everything is pulled apart. And then that will begin the wrapping part, which we're going to start from this end that way to basically smooth out all the loose wiring. Okay, so now that we got the speaker wires on the right side of the junction where the ground plate is, I'm going to go ahead and secure it with electrical tape and just wrap it around there. Okay, so I individually wrapped each corner, so the antennas and the ground plate curved down, and the rest of the harness leading to the board monitor, and then your subwoofer, oops, hit the iPhone there, subwoofer connector individually, just so that they're neat, and then the junction right here all together, so it doesn't move place and lose its position. Now we're going to go ahead and continue unwrapping. Just have a few sections left. We have to be careful at this junction to keep its form, and then finally remove the 26-pin connector speaker harness. Well, it looks like it wasn't intertwined, they were just wrapped around, so looks like we just have to step on this end. And as you can see, I can just pull it out. Okay, I forgot to tell you that two speaker wires which lead to two rear speakers on the doors are part of this bunch here. You're gonna cut probably at this point, because you're not going to need the ones from this leading all the way to the front of the vehicle. The wires would be the blue and the yellow with the twisted purple and gray pair on both, and that goes to the connector on the amplifier, which you can see it here and on the other side. So be careful not to lose the place on those. So you can actually cut them at this point here, because the one on the vehicle, the existing harness, you're going to cut from that point and splice those two. And these are the only two wires that you're actually going to cut and splice to do the entire navigation harness retrofit, versus cutting the wires over by the B-pillars, which is a lot sloppier. So I'll carefully separate these and show you the beginning of the wrapping of the entire harness. And there you have it. It's the 26-pin connector with the speaker harness removed. And then you have the two left here, which you can just cut from this point. And just like what I did here, I'm going to go ahead and wrap some tape around here so it doesn't lose the form. And then from that point on, we're going to go ahead and start the full wrap. Starting from this end, moving towards the front. Okay, so this is the end result. electrical tape wrapped around. You've got your board monitor ends, the blue and the white. Okay. These wires here go to the rear cigarette lighter under the rear vents. And someone cut it. Won't say who. And then goes up to the C-pillar in the back, your ground plate, and you've got your antenna connections right by the C-pillar. Okay, and then this one goes right to the subwoofer box with the 4 speakers, and then that will fish through the back to the trunk, and this is the junction, and then you've got your relay that will mount to the body, and then this goes to the navigation computer, your red, your blue. The red one is for the speed sensor, and then the reverse, the blue, is pretty much the video, the power, and all that. And then you've got this, which goes to the Trimble for the MKII computer. Now going back, this is your main harness to the DSP amp. And then you've got your 16-pin connector that goes to the DSP amp. And then this here is your CDC connector, which is your positive, the ground, and the iBus wire. Okay, and then going back here, this goes to the radio module. And this case, I have a C43 radio module. Okay. Along with the antennas, the antenna cables. And finally, lastly, the last connection you want to plug in, double check all the work first before you do this, is the main connector for the power. This plug here goes to the reverse signal and the speed signal, which routes all the way along the passenger side to the ABS module. Now if you have an MKIII or MKIV, you don't necessarily need to plug that in. MKII, yes you do. That should be it. Okay, so we're about to begin the navigation retrofit in the 1998 740i stock radio with DSP. So, first thing you want to do is remove all the bulky items. I remove the cover, the CDC cover. We're going to go ahead and remove the rear seat cushion, the bottom. And then we're going to remove the driver's seat. We're going to leave the battery plugged in for now so that we can adjust the seat to move forward or backwards up until just before we disconnect the cable to the driver's seat so it doesn't trip the airbag light. We're going to remove the cassette components, which I've already unscrewed. You basically just flip open the tabs of the front, and I believe it's an Allen key hex, and it's either a 2mm or 2.5, and that'll come off. You just unscrew it. You pop that out. And that comes right off. We're going to undo the wooden strip. We're going to pull the glove box down, remove the paneling in there, just so that we can remove this center console. We're going to remove this wooden piece right here, and that'll expose some screws. And then from that point on, we're going to remove the seat backs, and that'll expose the passageway for the cable. So I'll get a couple things ready. Okay, so we removed the bottom cushion by just pulling up on both sides. They just snap on. And to remove the seat backing, we removed the headrest, and you just pull out also. This is the 740 with no adjusting seats, no heated seats, nothing. To remove the trims, to remove the seat back, you have to remove this 10mm plastic nut. You've got a 10mm bolt there. Same on the other side. And then you've got one bolt, one nut on each side, also 10mm on the bottom, to actually release the bottom part of the seat backs. So both sides. Okay, so before we disconnect the battery, we're going to remove the front seat. But in order to do that, we have to move the seat back and forward in order to get to the bolts that hold it down. So the bolts, it's the Torx, and it's a T50. The plastic piece here is a T30. Use a small drive in the socket. And then from there, just before we remove the seat, we're going to have to disconnect the battery before we disconnect the connector, otherwise it'll trip the airbag light. And then from that point on, there's going to be a lot of room to route the harness, which it does go under the seat up to the center console. Okay, so I've disconnected the battery, but there's this cable here that you have to remove, which is the adjuster for the seat belts that go up and down based on whether the seat is forward or backwards. So there's this little clip here. What I did was I just pushed it up with a flathead screwdriver, and that releases the lock. And just make sure you do it all the way out. Okay. And it's basically a pin. You just pull it out, and it retracts. So be sure you don't lose that, and be sure that you reconnect that when you put the seat back. I've already disconnected the battery, so all I have to do is just flip down the cover, dislodge it, release it, and the connector will come right out. And might be a little jammed. No. Well, I'm going to put the camera down to use my other hand. So I got a better grip on it, so all it does is just pulls right out, just like the amp connector. It comes right out. And like I said, be sure that you disconnect the battery first, otherwise it'll trip the airbag light, and then you're going to have to reset it. If you have the tool, that's fine. If you don't, then you're going to have to go to the shop and possibly pay someone to reset it. So then you can go ahead and lift the seat out, and when you do the nav harness install, it goes under this carpet and up to the center console. Okay, so I've removed the seat backs, basically removing all those nuts that I told you and the bolts on the side here. And then from this point on, you have to remove the 4 plastic pegs or rivets, whatever, that hold this top cover deck down. And you're going to have to remove the C-pillar covers, the lights, first before this can come out. Otherwise it'll get stuck, and you're going to be yanking and yanking and yanking and risk damaging the subwoofer speakers. Okay, remove the C-pillar lights. It's handy to have one of these tools that removes panels and stuff. 3 bolts. 1, 2, 3, and they are 8mm. Okay, so the 3 bolts have been removed, and all you do is just you pull. Out it goes. And there's your amplifiers there that the antennas are connected to, and your ground plate right there. So we'll continue on. Okay, remove the speaker grills and remove the top screws, 2 on each side, which would be T10 Torx. And this is after removing these C-pillar covers, Once the screws from this speakers are removed, then this half cover can be removed. In my case, I have the rear window blind, so it is 2 pieces. On the non-DSP vehicles, it's just 1 piece, and there is no rear deck. Okay, in order to remove the second half of the rear deck, in my case, which has the rear window blind, you have to go right under the tail lamp, the high stop tail lamp, and remove this nut, because this is what secures that rear deck down. And we should be able to get to the access hole there. You can remove the top deck to make it easier, but in my case I have small hands and I can work with the already given space. I just realized that there were 2 more bolts that needed to be removed, which is also under to the sides in the trunk. So in addition to the nut right by the center tail light. Okay, and after that, unplug it, which is this plug here, for cars that are equipped with the rear sunshade. And then basically just unfeed it, and then the top unit will come out. Okay, so when you are pulling the second half of the top rear deck out, in my case I have the rear shade and it's a lot heavier, so you want to grab one end, lift up and pull, and get it at an angle so it doesn't rub on the speaker surrounds and damages it. Usually the surrounds are dry because if the car sits out in the sun, it makes it dry. In this case, looking at the surrounds, mine are still good because it's been garaged for 6 years. So I'm going to do my best to try not to damage it. Looking through the rear windshield, there's your driver's side speakers, and you see those 2 little dots there? Well, those will be the hole punch outs. Remove those, and that's where the GPS antenna will mount. And there's your access hole to the rear trunk, and that's where we will fish the navigation harness starting from the back. Remove the subwoofer connector because you're going to use the other one on the navigation harness. And while we're here, we can start undoing the antennas. This one, and I need to figure out which one's which. That goes to the radio module. We can undo this one too. One of them goes to the analog cell phone antenna, I believe. Okay, so you've removed the CDC cover. Now we want to remove this panel here, and all we have to do is just undo this thingamajiggy, rivet, or whatever you want to call it. Pop that out. Be sure not to lose the pieces. It'll help if you clean out the rear trunk and remove. Unplug the harness. Okay. All the connectors to the amp. These 2. Just these 2 are fine. And kind of just push them away. Undo the mount to the relay, because that's where we're going to put the other existing relay. So there's the access hole right there. I'm going to just push out the top portion and snip out a little bit so I can feed the other harness through. Okay, so I fed the board monitor end of the harness through, and all we're going to do is just continue to pull. Be sure not to hit the speaker surrounds. on the other end of the slack, just make sure that the end is pushed all the way through so that when you continue to pull, you don't have to keep running back and forth. Okay, I removed the CD changer, which is brackets here. Remove 2 screws here and 2 front screws, and the CD changer slides out. You have to disconnect the connector and the power cord right there. And then remove the amplifier. In this case, the factory must have gone cheap or lazy and only put 2 top bolts and not 2 bottom bolts. Okay, that's your Philips amp. That's why I didn't have to code it. All the Philips amps that I've dealt with so far didn't have to be coded on any of my nav retrofits. Okay, and then we will remove this bracket to get to the rear here to install the radio module. And what a dumb place to put it. Okay, so the padding has been exposed after moving these 2 rivet plastic thingamajiggies. There's your, I believe, your tilt sensor for the vehicle, alarm system, anti-theft, I think. The radio will mount right here, and the bolt will screw in right there. So basically, you just take care when you stick it in there not to damage the outer rear clip, because that is the body. And you ding that, it'll show on this side. Okay? Okay, now that both bolts are securing the radio module, that's where it is, and that's where it plugs in. And just rip the top part off, because you can install the bracket for the navigation computer. So you have to remove the existing one here. Got 2 10mm nuts, I believe, and then replace that with the navigation bracket. Okay, well, one little addendum is that before you button the damn radio module up, before you bolt it on there, you have to plug in the harness first before you bolt it on there, because there's no room for the connector to slip in before you lock it in place. Why do they make these things so hard? Okay, don't forget to unplug the connector to the subwoofer box and unbolt the nut to the ground plate. I'm no longer using that harness. And we're now going to mount the ground plate to the new harness. Just gonna neaten this up a little bit so it's not all tangled up. Okay, so the rear subwoofer connector is plugged in, and don't forget to plug in the antenna cables into the pillar amplifier. Okay, go ahead and start putting everything back together, and don't forget to put the GPS antenna where those 2 punch outs go and route them through. Actually, that's the only component that I'm missing, which I will just go and install later. Okay, so I've got the rear seats back together. The bottom cushion I did not put back together because I had to remove this trim here. Be careful not to break it. And it's very nice to have one of these panel removal tools. Most audio shops have them. Actually, they all should have them. As you can see, I did not crack or break any of the whatever you call these things, snap-ins. These always break. So this actually helps a lot and saves everything from cracking. But this thing's got to be replaced anyway because it's scratched and nicked and yada yada yada. It's seen its days. So now's a good time to take your vacuum and vacuum all this crap out and clean the carpets. Looks like the person who last had this vehicle is a pig. So you got to remove the side panel here, your B-pillar cover, the bottom part, which when you remove both trims over the door sill, all you have to do is just yank, pull down, and it comes out. And I have the wooden grain. Okay, so that exposes the underside, which you can route your harness through. And you unfold this part, and it routes under there, actually right under here. And we're going to work on this center console next. So the cover has been removed, so you remove these two screws, and your center armrest should come off. You can see that this is the connector for the telephone. This is the ELO connector, and the older vehicles, 96, I'm not sure when the cutoff year was, maybe 97s had the old RJ45 for the CMT 3000 VR handset phone. This existing harness can be used to retrofit the Bluetooth module as with the older RJ45 connector, but those require an adapter. But anyway, continuing on, that loosened it up, and so basically it's supposed to come off. Pull forward. There you go. Again, now's a good time to clean. Okay. These have to be removed also. Those screws for the center console to come up. And we're going to work on that wooden console over there next. Actually, after the rear vents. While we're at it, you might as well remove these screws too. Okay, so when you remove the bottom cover, which is this, you want to lift up a little bit, stick your hands under there, okay, and don't just push for this piece to come out, because sometimes this can actually break, separate the face of the vents, and I know from experience, I've done it twice already. According to the TIS, it says to kind of pry apart a little bit, basically creating a gap, and at the same time what I was doing is I pulled down a little bit on it and pushed out, and that just came out pretty easily. So no damage on the vents. And basically you just push down on it and pull out, and it'll come out from separate from the tube. Okay, again, more mess. Now's the time to vacuum it out and clean it. Here you got to remove these two screws, and you see that there's your airbag mounts right there. You're not going to mess with any of that. So those come out. Whoops. And so we're done with the rear part of it, and then we're going to work on the center, the wooden console there. And that needs to be replaced because the ashtray cover is broken. Okay, the shift plate, just, right. Pull on the leather. I don't think you really have to worry about that breaking or ripping. Once you got that out, don't remember if there's any screws. Actually, no. You just go ahead and yank up on it, and the assembly does come out. Now I have to replace this switch, so I'm going to go ahead and disconnect it. Push it out, because the previous owner or whoever spilled something on it, coffee, soda, and it barely moves. Okay. And there you exposed one screw, and another screw on the right, and Okay, we've got one hidden screw I forgot about there. Okay, the stereo components. We've got the radio out. DSP just pops right out. And the digital controller, the display. The MID will pop out, but you gotta press down on this center clip here while you push out with the other hand, but I'm holding a camera with my other hand. Okay, that's out. And just disconnect the connector, press down, lock, slide it down, pops right out, blah blah blah. Got your control, same thing. Unplug all the connectors. And you got your buttons here. And 99 up, it's they changed to the new module where it's just one single piece, the whole unit that slides in and out there too, just like these. Okay, remove the wooden trim. There's a button here on the older cars for the cruise control. The 98 doesn't have it. Remove that screw. Remove that top screw. It's a Torx. It could be T15, T30, T10, I don't know. Two screws on the bottom here. You got one over there by the OBD2 port. 95 cars don't have that. Got one on the right side, right under the cup holder. Kind of hard to get to, but just with a little finessing, you can get to it. Be sure you don't break your cup holder, but the screwdrivers, the right size will fit on it to get that nut, the bolt off the screw. And we're going to work on the passenger side wooden trim in a bit after I move these set of screws. Passenger wood trim. You can take the clips off and pull the glove box down. Don't really have to as long as you have the right tools. Screw here, screw here, screw here. Basically take this panel off, and then you're going to reach behind and unscrew the plastic nuts, which are big plastic nuts for this bottom piece here, and then the rest of the plastic nuts for this top piece here, and that'll expose this end so you can remove just those two screws. A lot of work. Unscrewing the plastic nuts. Some of them will face in, some of them will face out, based on the space they're allowed. So if you want to get confused, you can just do it in order. So I can start from this end. Okay, went in this way. So just basically remove all these plastic nuts so that you can remove these two pieces here to get to those two screws. Well, it looks like there's a pattern for both top and bottom. You route the harness through, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let's see, I know that it goes straight through that way, but what I will do is I'll go up through like I normally do and go down that way. A lot easier to do. Ta-da! Okay. This thing has a lot of slack because I believe this is for an IL. I don't know. This car's an I, so that's why it has a lot of slack. That's good. So now we're ready to put back the center console. Put everything back together in reverse order. Blah 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 blah. And we're going to plug in the board monitor, nav computer, put the seats back to basically put everything back together, and boom, we've got Navi. Right. Basically plug everything back in. I have the old style buttons. Just going to have to find another frame that has this separate holes that I can just plug these buttons to. You can also fabricate something. So anyway, we're going to do a test first before plugging everything back together, putting the wood grain back. So I'm going to plug the 16:9 monitor and the MKIII in the trunk. Okay, MKIII is plugged in. We will connect the power cable. We've got power. Okay. There we have it. Turn on the key. Okay. Went off.
To tell everyone, this was such an amazing experience. Because
and there you have it.
For the first time.
Navigation retrofit. So, I've already tested this before. I don't have to recode the Philips amp. I do have to recode the navigation computer to the VIN number of this vehicle. So now that I see everything works, I'm going to go and button everything back up and enjoy the new navigation retrofit. Okay, I took my E39 CD changer out and we're going to plug that in and test it out. It'll work. There's your iBus connector, power. Plug that in. Got power. And plug that digital coax cable in there. Lay it right there. And we've got CD. There we go.
How suddenly the whole world can change overnight.
Okay, so just have to plug everything back together, and I'm out. Oh, got the lights working. Alex the Seal. Yeah, right. Our lips are sealed. As a kid, my friend thought that those were the lyrics to the song. So the only thing that you need to do to complete your nav retrofit, and the only two wires that you will splice throughout this entire retrofit, remember where the two speaker wires earlier when I was wrapping the navigation harness? These two wires will be spliced into the amplifier's main connector, and all you do is just find the same color wires, splice them together, and you'll have the last two speakers, which are the rear door speakers, function. So that's the only thing I have to do left in order to complete this navigation retrofit. But otherwise, I'm enjoying my new nav in my 98, which is probably like the 5th navigation retrofit I've done.